I'm here with Peter Dunne, the former MP, United future MP, and also a political commentator. Kia ora, Peter, and thanks for joining me.
Sure, Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you again. Just today we had the Finance Minister, Nicola Willis, give her pre-budget speech, which sets things up for the budget, which is on May the 30th this year. You've had a look at that speech. What did you make of it?
Well, it's part of the typical pattern of ministers of finance before the budget, trying to set the scene. She didn't give too much away, but she gave enough away, I think, to set a bit of flavour. She talked about the tax cuts, so they're obviously going ahead, but they're going to be more modest than first intended. She also talked about this not being a budget of austerity, and that's clearly a reference to earlier tough budgets and a fear that some people had that this might be in that vogue. And she made the other interesting comment that the government's expenditure targets, which have led to all the public sector job cuts, have now been met. So I thought it was quite interesting, a way of setting up the scene for something positive to happen. She's obviously keeping the positive news, though, for the budget itself.
Yeah, because they promised tax cuts. That was one of their campaign messages, and she's now saying that 83% of New Zealanders will get a tax cut, and mainly that sort of low and middle income class. Do you think this is the time for tax cuts?
I think there's an argument to be had either way on that one. I'm not persuaded that we shouldn't do them. On the other hand, I can see the argument that this is not the time to be, if they are going to be borrowing for tax cuts, something she's always denied. But I think they were in a cleft stick, having promised them at the election and having been so forceful in that promise. They really had little option but to deliver them, particularly, I think, in a climate where people are a bit suspicious about some of the other things they've done. So this may be a way through. Now, the question becomes, if they are of a very modest nature, whether people will say, is that all? And was it all worth the fuss just to get this much? Now, that's the political calculation, obviously, that she's had to make, and they've decided that clearly that proceeding is better than not. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Because some may say there have been a government of cuts. They've been cutting back quite a few projects that the previous Labour government had set in place. Do you think there will? You spoke of positive messages. Do you think there will be positive things in the budget where they actually are doing new projects and creating things?
I think there'll be some good news. There may be a repeating of some of the news that's already out there, some of the education changes, for instance. I think that yesterday's announcement about food in schools seems to have gone down reasonably well. I expect that will be sort of re-announced. Yes. Because there's nothing like repetition to get the point across. But I think we'll also see some sort of a look ahead. And again, she flagged that in the speech this morning to the re-establishment of the Social Investment Fund and the whole concept of social investment as a guide to future policy making, which was something, of course, that was very, very prominent in Bill English's mind when he was Prime Minister.
Yeah. Now, I'll put you on the spot a little bit here, but how would you rate this government so far since they've come into power? What sort of score would you give them out of 10?
I'd probably put them about 5. Okay. I think that, look, they've done a lot. They've probably been one of the most active new governments we've had in a long time. But a lot of their activities, to me, seem to be like sort of tick box activities. We've checked that one off. We've checked that one off. What's been missing, and I think was even missing from Nicola Willis' speech this morning, is no big picture statement about this is the New Zealand we're trying to build. This is where we want to be. This is what we want to do. These are all steps along the way. It's been more the focus on checking off numbers 1 to 49 in the 100-day plan and then the next quarterly action plan. Yeah. So I think the bit that's missing is the big picture. And until that is put in place, I think a lot of people will say, so what's all this about? What's it in aid of? Where are we heading? Yeah. And I just think they've strategically failed on that point so far.
Now, you've observed many prime ministers over the years. How is Luxon stacking up as a prime minister?
Oh, good and bad. I think the good is that he's clearly decisive. He in his mind has a direction of where he wants to go. The bad, I think, is that he hasn't really communicated that with the public, and he hasn't seemed to me to be as, and I don't like the use of the word, but I can't think of a better one, as empathetic with some of the concerns that have been raised from time to time. It's more or less more or less a sort of a, yeah, well, what did you expect? We've got to do this. And that works for a while, but I think people expect to be taken along, you know, along the journey with them, rather than just being told, this is what we're doing, trust us, we know what we're doing. And I think there's a bit too much of that at the moment.
Then I'm sure we'll be talking much more about this in the next few months and that, and obviously after budget, hopefully. Thank you so much for your time and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Andrew. My pleasure indeed. Thanks.
Thank you. See you then.